I'm going to do a brief song and dance because we're awaiting the arrival of our reviser, or of a particular reviser. But today on the agenda, we're going to have final action on HB 2419. For those of you who don't recall, we actually heard and worked this bill last year. It sat below the line and sat below the line and sat below the line. And then I went and discovered what the holdup was. And so once Jason gets here, I have an amendment that is going to, I hope, make our jobs a whole lot easier and get it above the line. By the way, committee, I think you'll be happy to know, I know I certainly am, happy to know that my last report out to appropriations was done this morning. Yes, I agree. So now we're on vacation time. Just working, bills and stuff. But Jason was on the phone. He's on his way up here any minute now. So in the meanwhile, I'm going to stop with my song and dance, and you can talk amongst yourselves. Can't believe you'd be triple booked. All right. Well, as I kind of warmed up the crowd a little bit there for you, Jason, I said that today we would be having final action on HB 2419, and some gave me a little bit of a blank look. So, do you think you could maybe get us up to speed a little bit on what the core 2419 was to begin with?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 2419 contains several amendments to the Kansas Barbarian Act as it's being named under the bill. This bill has several amendments regarding the licensure and regulation of barbers, amendments pertaining to barbering schools in Kansas, and also amendments updating powers, duties, and obligations of the Board of Barbering. There was a memo that was distributed to this committee last session when the hearing on this bill occurred, and that memo, I believe, has been distributed again, so you should have that at your seat. It creates law defining barbering is amended to clarify the term includes shaving of the head, face, and neck, and also includes coloring, bleaching, and tinting of the hair. The term barbershop is amended to include barber suites and chair lease areas. Chair lease areas are defined as the workstation in a barber shop that can be leased by a barber other than the barber who owns that shop. There's also new terms related to a senior status license and a student permit. Regarding barbering schools and colleges, there's, in addition to the current statutory requirements for being approved as a school or college, the bill would require institutions to meet minimum requirements for opening a school or college and possessing the appropriate equipment and materials to run a barbering school or college. It would require that prospective students satisfy qualification requirements for attending a school or college that are established in rules and regs, and that each student obtain a student permit in order to practice while they're enrolled. A lot of this would be done through rule and regs by the barbering board. It also adds some new provisions regarding the neatness and organization of students in the work areas, prohibition on students receiving compensation, and requirements for maintenance of student records. With respect to licensure, again, the bill raises the minimum age from 16 to 17 and then clarifies conditions and requirements for obtaining a temporary permit, which could be issued to individuals who have graduated from an approved school or college but have not passed their examinations. There's also language in there clarifying how you obtain an instructor license and what the requirements for that are. There's also a new senior status license type for barbers who are at least 70 years of age, have practiced at least 40 years, and want to remain licensed but no longer in an active practice. There are amendments under the bill regarding examinations. Current law requires practical skills demonstration of written examination. The bill would add a third examination that you have knowledge of the laws and regulations governing the practice of barbering and certain standards for how the applicant must score in order to pass those exams. The bill takes a big statute on the maximum limits for the various fees and makes adjustments there as to what the fees the board may charge. You can see that in the bill. There are also amendments regarding the actions the board may take to regulate the practice of barbering. This includes requiring each barbershop to be licensed, each barber school and college hire only licensed barbers, and require any licensee whose license has expired to have it restored before returning to the practice. Also allows the board to take disciplinary action against licensees. So the board could take action against the licensee if they've had other disciplinary action taken against them by the board or other licensing body, has committed a Class A misdemeanor or misdemeanor involving illegal drugs, obtained or attempted to obtain a license by fraud, or practiced without a license. There are also some factors for the board to be considered that are added into the statutes when an applicant seeks to have their license reinstated. There's also provisions that in addition to civil action by the board to cease and desist, makes it a Class B non-person misdemeanor, punishable by a fine of up to $100 for violations of the act. So that is added to the bill. There are also some various administrative statutes to update the board's powers regarding investigations and the issuance of orders and subpoena powers of the board, as well as assessment of costs of investigation. The bill would go into effect on publication of the statute book, which that would be July 1st of 2022 if it's enacted. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And if they are too technical, I will hopefully have a representative of the board behind me that I can defer to.
Sure, someone can jump in. All right, committee, if that sounds familiar, it's because we worked it and passed it out of this room last year. However, it didn't ever get above the line. And so in order to get it above the line and kind of maybe reduce the footprint of the bill, I have an amendment. And if you could pass that out, that would be fantastic. I can I'll have Jason summarize because he's really good at it, but the vast majority of it is striking out. And the plan is to make this as palatable as possible for everyone involved, increasing the statutory limits on the fees because that was a looming necessity, or not looming, but it was on the horizon and we saw that in the budget. But also to allow the barbering agency to kind of police non-licensed or lapsed licensed actors. So, Jason, can you provide more of a summary for me?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, real briefly, the amendment does strike the vast majority of the bill. It would retain three sections of the bill. Section 1, which formally names these statutes as the Kansas Barbarian Act. That had been the known name, but not the official statutory name of the statutes. The bill also retains section 10, as the chairman noted, which are the fee schedules that the board has to abide by in establishing the regulatory fees for licensure. And then the bill also retains section 16 on page 13, and these are the enforcement powers of the board. And so those amendments would still become part of the bill and part of the law if enacted under the bill. The remaining provisions of the bill, however, are stricken, as you can see. And so just those three statutes would go into effect on July 1st of this year.
Excellent, thank you. Questions or discussion from the committee? Representative Barnberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question's for the reviser. Did you draft this original bill? What's it like to have all of your work just struck?
It's better than it staying below the line.
This is true. This is true.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you bringing that question up. But one of the things that I got to say this for a board that I used to serve on, Kansas Board of Barbarian. I appreciate all somebody who's been is a necessity. Things that need to remain in the law. I appreciate your these are the things I do appreciate the work that this committee has done.
So I guess I'll move my amendment. I need a second. Yes, thank you. My amendment was moved by me, seconded by Representative Arnberger, and then I closed. I suppose that's the way that went. Yes, discussion. I asked for that. Representative Burrows.
So it was easy to read through what
That's in the trailer bill. Representative French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So where does this leave the age question?
I believe that does not change with this law, so it'll still stay at 16.
16 is the current. Here it says 18. I thought maybe it's because it's lined out, it looks like an 8. Okay. Thank you.
Representative Wagner.
my memory was that part of the original bill, part of the reform was to have a senior status license. That was new, which is listed here as a license, but I would imagine all of the definitions of what a senior status is taken out. I mean, is that a conundrum that need attention? Or
I think Mr. Long might be able to help me out with that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the revisor's office would ask for authority to make the technical edits necessary to conform with the policy of the balloon amendment if it's adopted and the bill is passed, which would include cleaning up any language in the remaining provisions that relate back to provisions that were stricken.
And if we could also just, so basically for point of discussion, this, for the cause of the Barbarian board, it does get their fees, re-upped. It does sort of reconfirm and maybe even strengthen somewhat their powers as a board to regulate. Okay. And then pretty much boom. I mean, that's kind of the story. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, it actually, currently, if they need to shut down a bad actor, they have to go to the DA. Because if they're not licensed, then they don't have a license to pull. So they don't really have the jurisdiction. This actually gives them a little bit more strength in that position. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So sort of along the same line, what exact subpoena power does the board have?
We're not asking the right fellow on that one. Although perhaps the reviser can help out with this.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, if you look at page 14 of the balloon, starting in line 6 is the subpoena language. And so the board would have the authority to subpoena any persons from whom information may be desired to carry out the purposes and intent of the act, and to issue depositions from witnesses. This would include any documents, reports, records, or other physical evidence in the person's possession or under the person's control. It would need to be tied into an investigation by the board.
Does that answer your question, Representative? Representative Barnberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, my question's for you. Is that common with other boards to have subpoena power?
Yes, there are other regulatory boards that have subpoena power.
And are they, is it considered an administrative subpoena? Right?
Typically, it's considered in the same context as an investigatory tool when investigating potential violations of the act.
There's discussion. Seeing none. And all those in favor of the chair's amendment, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Very good. We have now amended the bill, and we're back on the bill. I will recommend, Representative Wagner.
Need a motion. I move that we pass House Bill 2419 as amended.
Second by Representative Amix. Discussion. Exactly. All right. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say nay. Very good. That the ayes have it. I will bring that in above the line, I hope, in a very short period of time. All right. Tomorrow, committee, we have an informational briefing from the Children's Cabinet. Melissa Rooker will be discussing, I think, CASA, very possibly. And so be sure not to miss that one. Okay, thank you. Yes. Tomato. All right. Tomato. All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned for today.